It's my pleasure to introduce our first two speakers this morning from Internet2. You met Florence last year at our meeting, and I'm so pleased that she was able to come back and be with us again today. Florence Hudson is a Senior Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer at Internet2. She works with the research and education community in the identification and development of new innovations in areas such as the Internet of Things, end-to-end trust and security, distributed big data analytics, and smart campuses and communities. Prior to coming to Internet2, Florence was with IBM as well as Hewlett-Packard, NASA, and as an aerospace engineer, she worked on future missions around Jupiter, solar power satellites, and the Space Shuttle program. So how exciting. So we're thrilled to have Florence here. And also we have Susannah Spellman, who serves as the Executive Director of the United States Unified Community Anchor Network Program, otherwise known as UCAN, which is much easier to say. And UCAN represents organizations like many of you here in this room. Most of you are not direct connectors to Internet2. You connect behind ILITE's membership to Internet2, and we pay a fee to be a part of the UCAN community. And Susannah is going to talk to us a little bit about that. But UCAN is focused on efforts to support the broadband needs of community anchor institutions around the country. UCAN also aims to explore new ways to leverage Internet2's National Research and Education Network for the benefit of K-12, libraries, museums, public safety, public media, and health institutions. And Susannah has more than 20 years of experience in the telecommunications and broadband industry. Prior to joining Internet2, Susannah worked with Booz Allen Hamilton, leading team specializing in the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program, otherwise known as BTOP, and the Public Safety Interoperable Communications Grant Program. So I'd like to welcome Susannah and Florence to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. This is great. I really appreciate it. Thanks, son. Okay, can you hear me now? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Get it? You can. So, she's you can. Isn't that cute? This will get better, I promise. No. So you heard a little bit about my background. I had to tell you something really interesting. So I was recently going through some of my paperwork at home that my grandmother, who brought me up, left for me. And I found a picture of me meeting Alan Bean in 1976. And I sent it to Nancy Conrad, Pete Conrad's wife, who we happen to know. So I love all this space stuff. If anybody wants to talk about that, let me know. That's my background. But now my foreground. So I'm just so delighted to be here, and I really want to thank Marianne and Dave and all of you for welcoming us back. We love being in Indiana. We love working with all of you because a lot of you are really driving the future, and that's what this discussion is all about, is the Internet2 community enabling the future, and we're all in this community together. And so we're very open to the thoughts you have on what you think we should be doing together, new areas of interest, and we do a lot on that already, especially the Chief Innovation Office that I happen to lead. But what we're going to do is give you a little Internet2 overview, talk about the network. I'll be passing it off to Susannah at that point. She'll talk about some of our trust and identity services that a lot of us take advantage of, cloud services, then I'll talk about our collaborative innovation community, which you're all welcome, to participate in because you're members of ILITE, and then we'll have an open discussion. So a little bit about Internet2. So Internet2 started 21 years ago. We're legal now. No, we've always been legal, but we're not-for-profit. Now I can have a Cosmo when we're done. We were actually created when the National Science Foundation's NSFNet, which was the network for researchers to share a lot of data, wasn't going to be available anymore. And about 34 universities, I wasn't there, got together in a dark hotel room. I guess there was smoke. I don't know anyone here that was there. And they said, we still need this. And they anteed in and created Internet2. So our official name is the University Corporation for Advanced Internet Development. And our nickname is Internet2. It's kind of like the US UCAN story. And so we're a 501c3, not-for-profit, and we're owned by the universities. So if we give you our business card, you look at the card and it says .edu. You're a .edu? Yeah, we're actually owned by the university members, which we're very grateful for. So our job is to do everything we can to help you all, which we really love to do. So this is a little overview of Internet2. We were created for this network, so that's the really big, important part of this, and we deliver it together, especially with Indiana University and the Global NOC, a very important partnership for us. So it's a 100 gigabit per second network, as you know, and you guys are all cool and all 100 gigged up now, which is very cool. Federated identity management at the people level, and I'm saying that on purpose because one of the things we've been talking about is what does the Internet of Things really mean? And if you have trust and identity between people, how do you do trust and identity for things? So when you do multi-factor authentication and it asks you your mother's name, is it like, Toshiba XL13579? How is it that you actually enable trust and identity and some of these new things? And so we'll be talking more about that later. We have cloud services through our Net Plus offerings, and Susannah's going to talk about what's available now. We have about 500 members now. Remember, we started with about 34. There are about 320 universities now, about 80 industry members. We have national labs, all the regional networks like iLight, and we also work with networks around the world. If you go to Wikipedia and you put in NREN, which stands for National Research and Education Network, you'll get a list of about 120 of us around the planet. And what we do is we hold hands to enable collaboration for researchers around the planet, which you all get to take advantage of. And then UCAN, yes you can, is about 93,000 community anchor institutions that connect through regional networks into the Internet2 network. And it's wonderful because we can enable advanced education, broadband connectivity for hospitals, schools. It's really wonderful. I think Susannah and I may have been together at the MCNC North Carolina session when they had a student talk about his experience when he had some terrible health problems. He had broadband connectivity and he was communicating with all these schools. You really can change people's lives in a very powerful way with this technology that we all enable. So our core purpose, in the way I say it at a very high level, is our job is to help, help all our members, the universities that participate, to reach their goals for research, education, and service. Their missions, your missions. And so that's what we always want to learn is how can we help make things better for you? We want to help enable collaboration across the whole community to drive innovation and advance the global internet. One of the things we're focused on is cybersecurity and end-to-end trust and security. What can we do in that area? And I think there's an opportunity for some new discussions in that area, very honestly. I was recently at a meeting where there was a firm that was talking about how they use machine learning to go into the network and find the bad guys or things, and how it's an average of 200 days before they enter the network and they actually take action because they're looking for where they want to take the action. Where's the good stuff? Where's the info I need? So you have some time sometimes to be able to figure out what to do. There's probably more we can do as a family, I'm thinking, and I'd like to talk more about that at some point. We want to make sure that we're advancing our core supporting infrastructure and technologies as required, and really, make sure that we're providing services that bring a lot of value to you. So Internet2 by the numbers, I told you a lot of the big numbers already, about 500 members, about 320 higher ed institutions, and you all are participating in a lot of this through the network, which is really great. We have a number of community events. We have like two biggies. We have one in the spring, which is called our Global Summit, which is a little more CIO, Vice Presidents of Research, a little more businessy, I would say. There's an exec track for CIOs. And then we have the Technology Exchange. And I'm a geek, so I'll say this. Like, it's Geeks R Us on both of them, but it's a little more technical on the Technology Exchange. And that's going to be in the fall. So every year we have the Global Summit in the spring, and then the Technology Exchange in the fall. And during the year we have workshops, working groups, webinars, and program advisory groups. So a lot of ways for people to participate. And what's really critical is this whole ecosystem. It's the Internet2 community envisioning the future. It's not Internet2. It's all of us working together. And so from the Indiana universities, which a lot of you represent, colleges, community anchors, through iLight, the Indiana Gigapop, and Internet2, and then connecting around the planet. So we really want to make sure we're helping you advance where you're trying to go. And so now I'd like to hand it over to Susannah, and she's going to take us through the network, trust and identity, and cloud. Here you go.
I'm just prefacing this that I'm not an engineer. I'm not an IT person. I don't play it on TV. I surround myself with really smart people like yourselves. But I also wanted to share the fact that I'm going to go real quickly through a lot of these products and services that are available to you as members of iLight and members of the US UCAN program that I oversee and part of Internet2 community writ large. But there's also an opportunity, if you have more questions about the network, Linda Roos is here. She's our Senior Director of Network Services, so bug her with the network questions, not me. And for our cloud services and the identity management pieces, give me your card if you want to know more information. I can put you in touch with the right people. They could do a webinar for the iLight membership, or even talk to you guys on the phone and get more in depth with what your campus may need. So, Internet2 network, 100 gigabit network, 8.8 terabits of capacity. It was upgraded about 5 years ago through a federal grant that was from the stimulus program, the Recovery Act. And it was a $100 million upgrade, $62 million award, and about $30 million in kind and donations and support from a lot of the major vendors that you guys work with and that iLight works with. For example, Sienna was one of the partners that we worked with. Just to give you a spans of how national it is and how many gigapops like IU is, you can look here at the network, advanced layer 1 services, and about, I don't know, Linda, how many nodes? I'm catching you off, great. Over 50. And we're already talking about how we can upgrade to the next level, to 200 terabits, 400 terabits. It's always a network that's developing. And Florence talked a little bit earlier about how we have almost 100 partners across the United States, across the world rather. There are like Internet2 and iLight type organizations across Europe, across Asia, in Africa even, South America, that are all built for education and research and interconnect with the broader research and education community, with Internet2, with iLight, to really kind of give you that global span in terms of connectivity and collaboration and research support. Here is a fun little chart that shows you how a lot of our federal government research agencies leverage the Internet2 network and partner with many of your organizations, as higher ed organizations are the primary performers of a lot of federal research programs. So we have Department of Energy, NASA, Department of Commerce, the Defense Research and Education Network, NOAA, which is a part of the Department of Commerce, we work with them to run their network, National Institutes of Health, and also help run the ESNet, which is the Department of Energy network as well. And then the cloud services part. So as Florence mentioned, the above net services, cloud-based services under our Net Plus program. So a lot of the major vendors that we work with in terms of offering services to our members and to non-members, they also interconnect with us at our different points of presence across the US to be able to provide higher performance connections for universities, for our members to use these cloud services. I'm really sorry that the text is so small, but if you go online under Net Plus, you can see all the different listings and services that we have, and basically almost all of them are on the network, on the research and education portion of the network, so that they can provide that higher performance, low latency connection to our campus and our users. And here's the program that I oversee. So the US UCAN program was started about 2001 under the premise that we need to be able to bring research education networks to more people, not just only the members of Internet2, which traditionally have been usually the very high research R1 type universities, but has broadened significantly in the past 10 years in terms of membership. So the US UCAN program, which was also called SEGP, Sponsored Educational Group Participant Program, even more awkward than US UCAN in terms of names, is a program that allows a university or a group of universities to partner with a connector like the Gigapop to sponsor the participation of other higher ed organizations, including community colleges, K-12 schools, library, healthcare, public safety, kind of your nonprofits that do service type organizations, to have access to the Internet2 backbone. So we're in 44 states across the United States. And when you heard the big number about 93,000 community anchor institutions connected, that actually represents 84,000 K-12 schools, because I mean, there's a lot of K-12 schools out there. I know that through a partnership with Education Networks of America, the K-12 schools and the libraries within Indiana have access to Internet2 as well, by partnering with the Gigapop and connecting that way as well. All right, so trust and identity. So this is the section I don't know as much about, so bear with me. But authentication has become more and more important today. You're signing in and logging into at least 5 or 6 different types of services every day. And there's a lot of new opportunities out there to use a single sign-on from Facebook or from Google, but we all know they're very hackable and they're commercially based, and we don't know the technology that is used behind them when it comes to federation, identity management, and more importantly, security. So Internet2, through its In Common program, has developed a platform for federated and identity management, which is all focused on being able to identify who are you when you're a person logging into a program or a system, and then working to authenticate it, understanding can you prove who you are, and then what can you do? So what's that level once you log in? What kind of permissions do you have in the software service or in the access to the online resources, et cetera? So, as I mentioned earlier, today there's a plethora of online services that you're signed into. I mean, how many logons do you manage? I mean, thank God for programs like LastPass that can memorize all my passwords, because I can't memorize them all, and I'm changing them every day. And every time there's a hack, I feel like I have to change everything or my life will fall apart. So what federated identity management helps to do is kind of centralize all that and bring together a single sign-on for privacy control. They use a standard-based open source technology, and they enable org-to-org and user-to-org transactions. So it's a huge back-end system, which the names here are the program of the different kind of components of In Common. So co-managed, grouper, shibboleth, they're all components of the identity management In Common program that help you as a IT manager help to manage users and what their access controls are, but also be able to work with other organizations to allow them to access your things and vice versa. And what's really interesting about this offering is that they're piloting it in North Carolina to be able to bring it to community colleges as well. So don't think it's only a higher ed thing. It's also something that we're trying to promote at the community college and even K through 12 level. K through 12 has a lot of movement towards digital education components, and the last thing we need is kids trying to remember all these different logins and passwords. So identity management will be critical there too. Another offering within Internet2 is the above the network services. Beyond just the network offerings that we provide in the identity management is also a cloud-based offering. It's a portfolio of cloud-based services where we've worked with the leading vendors across the United States to develop and negotiate special relationships, from pricing terms to also even service offerings targeted just for higher education. So one of the benefits of participating in the NetPlus program, which you can through iLight, even being a non-member of Internet2, is services at scale. So if you think you're being able to get things at a really, really good price right now, you might even be getting a better price because we're representing the entire higher education community when we're working with these vendors. So it goes through a really rigorous service. Not every cloud-based service is a part of our portfolio. It has to be sponsored and actually a service that higher ed members want and want to bring into their community. So we usually require at least 5 or 6, maybe even 7 universities to say, hey, I really want XYZ service. And then it goes through a pretty rigorous business model, legal, as well as technical model of review and association to make sure that they are bringing the best to bear to the higher ed community, but also giving us the fairest and best terms for the higher ed community. So there are a few services, well actually about 16 or 15, that are available to you all today. This is something that you can work through, iLight through, and they can channel you through to Internet2. A bunch of infrastructure and platform services, software as a service, voice and video, as well as security and identity. So I'm just gonna breeze through a few of these real quickly. So there's the AWS services, and that's through one of our business partners, DLT, and it's the whole suite of Amazon Web Services, the 30 different services from relational databases to cloud compute, et cetera, are available. Also Box, which is a very popular online storage and collaboration tool, is also available through the higher ed program for NetPlus. Voice and video. Mitel, which is a VoIP-based service, is available, but also 3 different online video conferencing services and collaboration services, Vidyo, Zoom, and BlueJeans Network. And they all have different speeds and feeds and things that make one better than the other, and that's why we offer 3, because not every solution necessarily is right for each campus. Also, in terms of software as a service, we offer Microsoft 365 education. A lot of you guys might be already getting it for free, but what we offer through the Net Plus program is actually service level agreements for escalation and when there's trouble support that you might need. And then also Splunk, which is basically a business intelligence type system for IT. All right, and that's the really, really quick overview of our services. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know, or let Linda know, or Florence know, and we can put you in touch with the right person to go in a little bit deeper into each of these.
Thank you, Susannah.
Thank you.
So now let's talk about the collaborative innovation community. Do any of you participate in our collaborative innovation community yet? Yay, okay. Oh, we want more friends. So if any of you want to participate, I can give you my card, and you can also just send an email to cino@internet2.edu, and you'll see it on the charts. So the Collaborative Innovation Program was created about 2 years ago when I joined Internet2 after my 33 years at IBM. As Brad Wheeler said when I did the statewide IT conference, I started as a child. And I dye my hair. And so we started it two years ago, and the first thing we did is we did a member survey, all the humans in our database, it was about 8,800. We went out and said, so what are the areas of open collaborative innovation you want to work on? Doesn't really matter what I think as the Chief Innovation Officer. My job is to enable you to realize the innovations that you want to work on. And so the survey came back, and the survey said the top answer was end-to-end trust and security, which really warmed my heart because I had actually been working on the Internet of Things strategy at IBM, and that was one of the key things that we were looking at, working with ARM and Intel and some others, end-to-end. We'll talk more about that. The second was distributed big data and analytics. And this is an evolution that's been occurring in a lot of scientific domains. Like if you think of CERN and the Large Hadron Collider, do any of you know people that work on the data that comes out of CERN? Probably some of you do. It kind of comes out of CERN, it goes to a tier 1 of universities, they crunch the data and locations, and it goes down to the next tier, like a good pyramid scheme. What's happening now is that there's a lot more distributed big data and analytics challenges and opportunities. Think of healthcare and life sciences. Think of all the genomic sequencers. Think of precision medicine, the genomic data, the clinical research, the clinical care data, my Fitbit data, environmental data, and all this stuff has to come together for them to do analysis on it and try to improve outcomes out of the new insights they get. So what are some of the challenges and opportunities we have in those areas, and how do we address them? So that was distributed big data and analytics, and then the Internet of Things. And IoT is here, it's all over the place, there's stuff on campus. How many of you have like a chip in your pet? Anyone have a chip in your pet? Yay, look at all the hands that go up. 5 years ago, people would say, what are you, crazy? And now you have chips in your pet. And so you can get like TMI about your pet. God, what were they doing over there? But, so you have the Internet of a lot of different things, the Internet of medical things. Oh my goodness, they show that insulin pumps can be hacked, which scares me a lot. I was recently speaking at a meeting at ARON, which is the Arkansas Research and Education Optical Network, and with their board, and one of the gentlemen there raised his hand and said, okay, I care a lot about this because I actually have, an implanted heart device that's Bluetooth connected. We all care about this, right? And the challenge and opportunity is that that cute little device is connected all the way to a bunch of other things potentially, right? So it could be an EHR or an EMR could be actually getting to it. There's the network, there's EHR, EMR system, there's the server, there's the storage, there's a device, there's the MyCloud in your house or whatever. So there are a lot of things to really think about, and the network connects all this stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity to think of what is needed in these areas, and these are also areas that are going to create a lot of jobs in the future, right? And our job is to create the leaders of the future, so this is really important for a lot of reasons. So we created innovation working groups around these 3 areas, end-to-end trust and security, distributed big data analytics, and Internet of Things, and then had the members bring forward use cases. So what do you want to know about this? And end-to-end trust and security, very interestingly, that working group and the Internet of Things working group said, we need them. We need end-to-end trust and security for IoT very early on. So we worked with IEEE and the National Science Foundation and brought our thoughts together and hosted a workshop at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., February of 2016. And we actually came out with this vision of tips for IoT. It's called Trust, Identity, Privacy, Protection, Safety, and Security. So that's an effort that we've been starting. We have some interesting things going on with that if you'd like to participate. Are any of you familiar with ITANA? IT Architects in Academia, really cool organization. They meet, I know, annually in person at EDUCAUSE, which is the IT education crowd. And we actually are co-sponsoring a working group with them now. Ken Klingenstein, God bless you, who's one of our trust and identity leaders for decades, is working with them. They're led by Jim Phelps out of UW, University of Washington, with a lot of universities. And they're working together on what are the enterprise IoT challenges and things we should be doing. What does this mean to the stack that we have in trust and identity? What are the actions we should be taking? And it's great because the IT architects, enterprise IT architects, different types of levels of architects, can think top to bottom. Like you can go way down to say, how does this all connect, and go way up to who does it affect? So there's really a lot of opportunity to get involved in this. It's going to be affecting a lot of us, if not all of us. We were also fortunate that we work very closely with the National Science Foundation, and they asked, we've been working with them on their transition to practice of cybersecurity research. So we were lucky to get a grant. It's a 2-year grant we got last August to enable all of us to work together in the Internet2 community to do matchmaking between cybersecurity researchers and then practitioners who can try this stuff out. So we had a workshop on TTP, transition to practice, and so coming from industry, I'm like, okay, give me a real use case. Like, I'm an engineer. Tell me a fact. Give me someone that's done this well. And they mentioned Bro. Any of you familiar with the Bro technology that came out of Berkeley? Some of you probably use it. And so that's one of their success stories. They funded the cybersecurity. There was funding research. There were some other funding sources, and they moved it into production. But that's like the big success story, and we need a lot more because our goal is to really make cyberspace safer, and we need a lot of new innovations. So we offered to leverage Internet2 as a matchmaker because all the researchers and the universities are our members, and then we have a bunch of cool practitioners like you guys and the regional networks and the universities that can give feedback to the researchers like, yeah, that's good, no, that's not going to work, like I can't understand that, or it'll work in my environment, or we won't, you have to put it in a container, it's not going to work in that, no LPARs, whatever it is we tell them. And then that feedback can help them make it more usable and hopefully get to an MVP, a minimum viable product, that we can get out the door and get the cybersecurity research working, operationalized, whether it's open source, industry, commercialized, just for universities, whatever it is, get it working. And so that's the goal of this NSF EAGR, they call their EAGR grants from NSF, or Early Concept Grants for Exploratory Research, which means you have a lot to figure out yet. You really haven't figured it out. And so we're looking to have regional workshops. We're hoping that maybe we can have one around here in the Midwest. We have one in California at TechX, our technology exchange, in the fall. And then we're talking to some people on the East Coast too to see if we can do some regional workshops, bring cybersecurity researchers in. NSF, DHS funded, the agencies asked us to help them work together, and practitioners like y'all that would like to see this research and say, I didn't even know you guys working on stuff like that. How cool is that? I'd like to try that out, or here's what I think, or I would tweak it that way, or let me know when I can use it. And that's what we're trying to do, is create this really collaborative, dynamic environment where we can all keep in touch. And I'm hoping that we can keep the cybersecurity research going into this funnel, and then we work together to try to get it into reality. And so that's what that's all about. We also looked at a couple of ideas very early on that we're not doing much about right now. There's a technology called SDP. Have any of you heard of software-defined perimeters? Okay, so software-defined perimeters, there is actually, the Cloud Security Alliance has a paper on it, very early technology yet, but some of the members say, well, what is that stuff? And so what we'll do is you bring it forward, and then we try to find a subject matter expert to talk about it, and let's understand what these innovations might mean for us, as well as network segmentation for IoT. We had Cisco do a presentation on that. In distributed big data and analytics, we're really increasing our focus on working with NIH. A number of the Internet2 folks from our networking team and our trust and identity team recently met with them, and they joined us at our global summit to talk about how we can help them. I joined the Cancer Moonshot meeting in DC with Joe Biden and Carol Burnett, Carol Burnett. I couldn't believe it. I was going to go, and they said, Carol Burnett. I'm like, it can't be that Carol Burnett at the Cancer Moonshot meeting. And I walked in, and there she was, and at the end she went like this. I'm so glad we had this time together. Everyone was like, ah! You know, the 20-year-olds are like, what's the big deal? You know, but anyway. So in the Cancer Moonshot meeting, what we were talking about, Joe Biden actually got up at the podium. He said, I know you doctors, you don't like sharing your data, do you? Well, you have to. And so what we're looking at is how we can leverage the network to help them, how our trust and identity solutions can help them because it's trusted sharing of data. And another thing I'm finding, and I'd be interested in any of you have seen this, is that, for instance, I was talking to one of the researchers I used to work with at IBM, who's at the Cancer Institute of New Jersey now. And he was saying that one of his postdocs had a bunch of data they were trying to get from NIH. NIH has 200 gig links into Internet2, by the way. And so this postdoc said, well, I did the math and it's going to take me 84 years to download the data. And my mother said, I have to graduate before then. And I said, I can identify with that. I had 2 kids in college at the time. Let me come help you. And so we went there and we found that while there are 200 gig links into NIH, and there were a few 10 gig links onto campus, it's affiliated with Rutgers, that there was a 100 megabit cocktail straw down to their desk, right? And so NSF actually has these grants, these cyber infrastructure, campus cyber infrastructure grants, where they try to address that. But I don't know that the medical schools know about that stuff, or the biochemistry or biochemical engineering researchers. Have any of you found situations like that working with like the medical side of the house, that they're having a challenge and having a high-speed link to get the data? I think that's an unknown, like an unk we used to call it, an unknown, because we're not necessarily talking to them, and they're not like the high-energy physicists, a bunch of geeks like us who are like, oh, this is fun, let me make this work. They just want to worry about their science. So I think there's going to be an opportunity for us to learn about more of those situations and perhaps help NIH and NSF working together on things like that. So those are the things we look for, is where are some of the root causes for us not being able to advance scientific discovery fast enough? How do we do that? And what I said to the NIH team was like, just invite us to listen. We're like a doctor, but we're like a technology doctor. We can listen and then say, maybe I can help you with that. And that's what we continually try to do. We created a Smart Campus CIO Advisory Council, because a lot of people are trying to figure out what this technology is, this IoT stuff and everything. We share best practices, and we also had an IoT Systems Risk Management Task Force I'll tell you a bit more about. We work closely with the NSF Big Data Hubs, and actually there's one, I think y'all are probably in the Midwest one, that's out of NCSA and Illinois. And they actually brought forward a large genomic data transfer challenge between University of Illinois, Africa, Europe, and Canada that we're working with them on. And so we're looking for situations like that where we can help plumb the stuff, P-O-U-M-B, all the way down. When I say plumb it doesn't sound good, but plumb it. And so we're looking to help in these different areas as well. And they also had a Smart Campus event that we went to talk about the challenges and opportunities in leveraging the data. There are security issues, there are data sharing issues, there are latency issues. There are a lot of issues to consider. And in IoT, we've been looking at some very interesting areas. There's an IoT sandbox, which we created with IBM initially, where they will provide access to their IoT Bluemix Foundation for free for a certain period of time, and we're looking at what more we could do with that. And then we've been looking at smart grid test beds. There's actually some work being done in North Carolina between RENC, the Renaissance Computing Institute, you guys might know them, the North Carolina schools, and MCNC, which is the North Carolina Research and Education Network. They have a little test bed called BEN. I like it because it sounds simple, but it's the Breakable Experimental Network. And what's interesting is as you look at these physical worlds that are connecting to the communications world and the information technology, I say IoT is like IT plus OT equals IoT to keep it simple. Information technology plus operational technology is Internet of Things. As these things come together, how do we create test beds to enable them to actually, simulate the hacks that are going to be done on this stuff? I was talking to a researcher at Texas A&M recently, and he said, so this is how simple it is. So you have your phone, and you connect to your Nest thermostat. So easy, and you tell it what to do. Oh, what does that connect to? The grid. Oh, Houston, we have a problem. So how can we enable test beds, not for network research, the standard network research and telemetry and looking at things that we could be doing, but also some of the cybersecurity issues, especially as we connect to the physical world. Is that something that we can be enabling more broadly? And so those are some of the things that we're looking at. So what we want to do is really stay very close to the researchers. I spend a lot of time with researchers, which is so much fun since I'm an old, well, my girlfriends say don't say old, I'm an experienced researcher, and it's a lot of fun because we get to look at all these different areas and figure out how we can help them. And so we're always interested in where the research is going, how we can accelerate scientific discovery through high-speed data sharing, through trust and identity solutions, maybe through other stuff. You know, we want to know so that we can help. So this collaborative innovation community is a combination of these working groups and special interest groups in these areas. Like one of the RPI researchers said, can you create a special interest group around smart grid? We're like, okay. And then, you know, we start hearing about the physical world issues. There's synchrophasers, PMUs. You guys know PMUs, synchrophasers? Anyway, they're these things that let you actually monitor what's going on the grid. And there's a synchrophaser consortium being created. So we find the researchers around the country and say, you know, ding, 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 and put them together so they can help each other. And so those are some of the things we do. And as it occurs, you know, we go to meetings like this, which we're very grateful for. Then we end up meeting really cool people like you and other researchers and IT folks. And we have this growing collaborative innovation community. And it's about 30% of Internet2 member institutions now, which was really the critical mass we were looking for. If we have like almost a third of us that are thinking about these new innovation areas, then maybe we can start figuring out what to do together, and that's really what we're hoping for. So we do monthly collaborative innovation community calls based on the areas that the members say they're interested in. You know, some of the early ones were like network segmentation for IoT, as I mentioned, by Cisco. And we have these industry members like Cisco, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon. And what we're looking to do is hold hands with the industry members to have them provide more value to the universities, you know, to our members and the regionals. How do we do that? So we have them present some of the cool stuff they have going on, some of their R&D. Microsoft recently hosted a Campus Connections Summit where we invited our Smart Campus CIO Advisory Council, and it was very interesting. You know how when you get like an invitation to a wedding, it's like you plus one, and you get to pick your plus one, which is always fun and interesting, and the family wants to know who it is, right? But anyway, so this was CIO plus one, and the CIO was able to pick the person on campus or in their university system that they were working with most closely on, what does this smart campus thing mean? How do I deploy Internet of Things? Some of the CIOs brought their provosts. That was very interesting. Some brought their chief facilities officers, because there's a lot of this physical technology stuff. One of them brought their a mechanical engineering professor that is running their IoT lab on campus, and he's also in the business school. So there was a real range of people. And we worked on together what are the areas of focus that are important on campus. So I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. And all of this is bottled on our wiki. If you Google Internet2 CINO wiki, you can find all this. We had Open Fog Consortium. Actually, the gentleman who presented from Princeton is now the Dean of Engineering at Purdue, not that far away, Meng Cheng. And so have any of you heard of the fog? I mean, not the one up in the sky. So Cisco talks about this. So you know how the cloud is all the way up in the sky? Well, the fog is closer to the ground. I'm not making this up. And then with fog computing, you have devices that are kind of more in like the rugby team in a scrum. They're communicating with each other. So like vehicle-to-vehicle communication, peer-to-peer communication, kind of closer to the ground and to the device. So we have a lot of information on things like that. Blockchain is coming up a lot. Is that a part of the puzzle for the future? And virtual reality is something where people go, gosh, there's so much data. Do we have to help? I'm not sure how much of it is streamed versus local. So, but we're looking at what some of these challenges and opportunities are. And we always want to know what else is on your mind. On Internet of Things, I'll tell you a little story. So when I started working on Internet of Things at IBM, people weren't ready for it. And 2 years later, they created a division and built a really big building in Germany. And so this is something that kind of sneaks up on you and then pinches you, to say it politely. One of the things that we're suggesting, and I talked a little bit about this last year, but our IoT Systems Risk Management Task Force has a deliverable that you could find on our website, and here's the bit.ly with it. And what they do is suggest that you start doing some benchmarking and baselining for what's already on your campus. Because some camps are like, oh yeah, you know, we're thinking about that IoT stuff that's just on the Gartner hype cycle. And then you look and you go, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff. It's all connected. You know, look at all the cameras that they can use for a Dyne attack. You know, look at the routers, look at this, look at that. Look at the Nest thermostats or whatever it is. And Shodan and Senses are two open source tools where you can go and look. And it allows you can put in, you know, things like SCADA systems, smart buildings, you know, industrial ICS, industrial control systems, and identify all the open ports on your campus. Anyone on the planet can do that. So it's really good for you to do it. It's like looking at your Facebook profile or Googling yourself, right? And so what I find is usually when I talk about this, you know, people are like, yeah, whatever, and then somebody goes in and goes, oh my gosh, and then they end up using the tool every day. So what we want is for people to realize that there's already risk out there. You know, we care about the network. We don't want people to hack into this stuff and be able to get through the network. So we need to be able to protect ourselves. And this is one of the tools. And so we have an IoT Systems Risk Management Task Force that went through this and created a deliverable for us to discuss. Then we have another deliverable. Remember in the old days, I guess we kind of still do it, like the systems assurance reviews that we would have. Do you have enough power? Do you have water? What's going into the data center? You know, are the tiles strong enough? Whatever it was you had to worry about. Now with all these Internet of Things connected devices, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. I was sitting with somebody from a Pennsylvania university, I won't say which one, and we were having this IoT and Smart Campus discussion. I can always tell when it connects to somebody because their eyes get really big like this while I'm talking. And I say, oh, so what's up? And so this guy said, well, I got a call this morning, he's from IT, and they're gonna put a new pool chlorinator on campus. And he was talking like this, like he still couldn't believe it and know what to do. They're putting a new pool chlorinator on campus, and they want an IP address. I said, so what'd you do? He said, nothing. You know, who's going to manage this thing? The swim coach, right? Is it going to get a data feed from where? Who's going to manage that? Who's going to make sure that the default password is changed? Who's going to make sure we have that new password? Who's going to make sure if it's a camera or other device that all the default passwords are changed and not to the same thing? You know, and that I have that information. How do we manage this? So they created this initial vendor management considerations document for Internet of Things because it's going to be different in every institution and on every campus, because it could be that the facilities guys want to take the lead. Procurement might have to get involved. Who's going to manage this? So this is a document where it lays out the questions, and then you really have to answer it for yourselves on your campus. But since it's like digitally connected and it can connect to the network, it feels like IT should kind of be in it somewhere. And so that's why we're trying to increase awareness, because we can't be like an ostrich, right? You stick your head in the sand and go, oh, I don't feel a hurricane, not a problem. You know, all this stuff is out there, and we really have to be responsible, and the responsible adults to help, right? Because they'll come calling, goodness knows. So a couple of things we're doing. I mentioned ITANA, an organization, IT architects in academia. It's kind of one of the little organizations. Internet2 kind of has like little organizations we keep under our wing and kind of help them move along. And we have a couple of others like that. This is one of them. And so, you know, they're working with Ken Klingenstein, who's one of our trust and identity experts for decades, to look at who does the management of this. You know, facilities, campus IT purchasing, where and how to place the management. What about the IP network? The data link layer controls, REST APIs. What's the business model? What's the governance? What's the funding for this, for the maintenance, and who's going to manage all this? A lot of things to think about, and we should just get started on that journey if we're not. And if we're already on the journey, it could be beneficial to hear what other people have bumped into in the night or in the day so that we can learn from that. I also mentioned how we're trying to work with vendors and partners like the cool vendors and partners, yay, and all the sponsors you have here today. Microsoft is one. They've been a member for quite a while. And they hosted this Campus Connections Summit, CIO Plus One we were talking about. And the second day, the first day we had, you know, best practices presented. Gordon Wishon, who's the CIO at Arizona State, presented his efforts in Smart Campus, and now going to like wayfinding for new students and all sort of fun stuff. And the second day was one of those, have anybody been in these new design workshops? That's what they call brainstorming sessions now. It's kind of fun. Anyway, so it was the second day. And so we had all these CIO plus ones talking about what's important to you. And it really was. It was the USINs, or USINs. And they came up with their key areas. And the 4 key areas that came out of this big discussion were in little groups: student success and data analytics, which has its own issues, like what about the IRB and what data can we use? And even if they think they want us to use the data, should we use the data? And if someone uses it for research and then publishes and forgets to anonymize the data, oh my gosh, what does all this mean? So there's a lot of opportunity in leveraging student success and data analytics. I don't know if any of you have heard about some of the work that Georgia State has been doing. They've increased the graduation rate by 22 points, not just 22%, but 22 points over the last 10 years. And they look at 700 to 800 data points every night about their students. And they've also put in a lot of, people to work with the students that might be at risk. Really have done a great job. But there's an opportunity to look at how we leverage this data. There are safety and security issues, and one of the things we're looking at is they want to create a cybersecurity learning hub. And if anybody is interested in participating in that, let me know. I was recently at Texas A&M, and there's a group called TEACS down there. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it. It's an agency of the Texas A&M system. When they said the agency, I was thinking the CIA. I'm like, ooh, you work for the agency, but it's different agencies. And so the idea of a cybersecurity learning hub came out of the IEEE and NSF workshop I mentioned at End-to-End Trust and Security as well. So this is a consistent theme of how do you teach people about IoT ethics and cybersecurity issues, and when are you at risk? And if you're creating a device, how you make sure that people don't have security and privacy issues and things like that. There's an energy and sustainability focus and collaborative research. And so a couple of the other things coming out beside the hub idea, the cybersecurity learning hub, is the Agile University, how you gather data and leverage it interactively and dynamically and safely. They're looking at creating an IoT lab contest, which might be kind of fun, and you'll hear more about that as they figure out exactly how they're going to do it at Microsoft. And then a research portal to help researchers get to all the assets that they need. I mentioned a little bit about the NSF EAGR, the Early Concept Grant for Exploratory Research, and we really want people to participate. We have webinars where we have cybersecurity researchers present what they're doing. We're going to have Jim Basney talk about CI Logon 2.0. Anyone use CI Logon? Very cool. Lets you use different types of capabilities so you can look across all of the different applications you have, even if you're using different protocols. And so other types of research. At Global Summit, we had one gentleman who's doing, it's Secure and Trustworthy Cyberspace, SATC they call the program, but also CPS, Cyber Physical Systems, and he's doing research on how EV charging stations are hackable. And so we were in a room, and some researchers are real entrepreneurs. They're out there, they're talking to everybody, they're creating their own business. Some of them not so much. Like, they're in their lab, they come up with these ideas, and they're brilliant, but they don't always get to talk to people about it. So this was one of those types of researchers. And he looked out, he said, how many of you have EV charging stations on campus? About 60% of the hands go up. And he goes, wow. And you know what he was thinking? You're also hackable. Like, he didn't say it that way, but then he presented his research and about how you can get into the EV charging station. If you get into the EV charging station, then you can take down the campus, the city, and the state. Not a good answer. But we need to be aware of some of these things. And so what we're trying to do is, as we said, have the researchers share what they're doing so people can say, wow, I really need that. Let me give it a try. And then so it can become something operational. So if any of you are interested in that, we're very interested in working with you too. And so we have a number of efforts going on. I told you about most of these already. To give you some comfort, the U.S. National Telecommunications and Information Administration also has some working groups, the NTIA, and we're involved in some of those. The CISO at UMBC is one of our leaders in our collaborative innovation community. He's been helping write some of the work on that. And that's about incentives and patchability for existing devices, which is the bulk of the devices at this point. So there's a lot of work going on in these areas. And if you want to know any more about this, please let me know. So that's what we had to present. So if you think about it, when we're envisioning the future together, these are areas that are going to be even bigger in our future, right? So how do we work on them together, which is one of the opportunities that we have. So now we'd like to go into discussion, and you don't have to remember our names, but here they are if you want to, Susannah and Florence. And so I think we have a few minutes. We have like about 7 minutes. And the lights come up, let there be light. And so we would love to hear your thoughts your questions. We take answers as well. We don't just take questions. So any comments or questions? What does this make you think? I love hearing that.
So, you did 30 minutes nonstop. You took 3 breaths, I think, the entire time. How is it that all of this is organized within Internet2? I mean, there's so much there that you're doing. Committees and meetings and relationships. So I guess the question is, how do any number of people in the room become a part of even one of those meetings or organizations or committees? I mean, do they contact you directly? Do they contact someone else? Because there was so much up there, and I assume your slides are available through the,
all of this
the conference
is, you can
webpage.
definitely,
But,
and I present this a lot, yeah. That's a
you know,
really good question.
It was a very dense presentation. I just wondered, how do I go back and look and say, I'd like to learn more about that particular thing?
So you can, one of the things we really try to do is be what we call one Internet2 as much as we can. And so you should be able to contact any of us and help you get connected. We'll find the person that might know the most about that, because we don't all know everything. We just can't possibly know everything. If it's the collaborative innovation community stuff, people know to have me or Emily on my team help out. So you can contact any of us. As Linda is a real expert in Internet2, has been in Internet2 a lot longer, I know, than I have, and probably longer than Susannah, I don't know. And so Linda's a real expert. She's watched the whole evolution of how we've evolved too, which is really cool. And so any of us can really help. If it's trust and identity and someone's interested in some of the new trust and identity for education research efforts, we can connect you to the right people there. And sometimes, or in the Net Plus services, we can get you connected. So it really should be able to be any of us, and then we try to bring it to the right person. And then I always try to ask, did I answer your question? And sometimes people just want to know, like, what is that? What is that? And that's fine. And then sometimes they want to jump in with their swimmies. And sometimes they want to dive in off the board, off the diving board. And so I find that it's kind of an evolutionary discussion usually. But sometimes I'll find, like a researcher I met with last week on this really cool research he's doing on dynamic watermarking, where they put like a cool little signal that looks like noise into a signal going between like vehicle to vehicle or something, and when it's, I've got a secret, and so when the signal comes back, if the watermark isn't in there, they know it's a rogue signal, but to anybody else it looks like noise. It's very cool. So I'm thinking, oh wow, vehicle to vehicle, smart grid, oh wow, there's so many places you can do that. And he's like, and I'd like you to create a smart transportation special interest group. I'm like, oh. So sometimes they lead us, which I'm very open to too, but then we want to make sure we're not too splintered trying to do too many things. But a lot of this actually tucks under a few areas. So I'll just mention the innovation area. A lot of it is the tips for IoT area, cybersecurity, end-to-end trust and security. The smart campus and cities includes smart grid, it includes smart transportation, because it's what's actually on the campus or in the city. There are buses, there are vehicles, there are, God willing, someday there'll be little chips on bicycles, so I know when these kids are going to go flying past me when I'm driving on campus. That scares the daylights out of me. They come out of nowhere. And so we try to tuck them into something so that it's not so expansive. But you should be able to contact any one of us, and we know what we know and we know what we don't know. And so then we'll try to find the right person for you. Does that help, Dave?
And just to add on real quickly, so if we within Internet2 don't necessarily know the answer, we know a lot of people within our community who might know the answer. So we might say, hey, you should talk to this other university in this other state. Just how ILITE does that for you all, we do that at a national level ourselves. So if we don't know the answer to the question, we can find someone who is asking the same question, and maybe you can find the answer together, or they're already starting to work on it. So it's a lot of facilitation, and that's what we'd like to help out with.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Very helpful, hopefully, for everybody. Yeah, there's another question or comment back there in the middle.
So hearing about all the IoT and vulnerabilities and things like that, my first thought when I hear that is we've got firewalls, we don't have access allowed from the outside, we don't have UPnP turned on, So am I missing something as far as all those vulnerabilities, or is it just really not as big a deal with firewalling and stuff?
Okay, well, that's a good question. Is there anybody else in the audience who wants to answer that before I do, based on your experience? Or worry beads? Yeah, right here.
For us at Wabash, vulnerabilities, we have the same thing, firewalls, stopping traffic from coming from outside to inside. But, the couple times we've had problems, it's been from inside. So that firewall is doing its job by letting that traffic through. Unless you start blocking individual devices, yeah, there's the IoT, when it comes to security, is more than just your firewall. Everything inside your network can be just as dangerous as everything outside.
I've kind of found that there's no such thing as a firewall anymore. You have cell phones coming on campus every day. They can establish their own personal connection to the internet anytime they want, pull in anything they want, and pretty much get by all of your outer wall perimeter. So really, you almost have to guard from all sides anymore.
Was there another hand over here if someone wanted to say something? So I think what we're finding is the world is changing. And so firewalls are very effective, right? But there are a lot of new attack surfaces. And what I like to say is, how we talk about the man-in-the-middle attack? This is like an army in the middle. There are remember like all those little G.I. Joes in Toy Story, like, all those little soldiers all of a sudden? That's what I think of when I think of the vulnerabilities that we have because of the Internet of Things. There's just so much stuff. And look at the Dyn attack or, the other things that occur where they can take, some video cameras or DVRs or whatever. And I feel like, oh my gosh, how do I make sure my DVR at home doesn't do that, Can I change the admin password on my Cisco router? Well, guess again, so I can't. So what is it that we can do? So what we just ask is, it could be you're totally fine and your firewalls protect you. But you know what? It's probably good just to check. So, perhaps if you look at some of these tools, you might find things that would surprise you. One of the universities involved in this ITANA working group, who will go nameless, sent a chart that showed that they did, a kind of a discovery process of what's on their network, and 52% of the devices found were unknown. They had no clue what they were. 52%. Right? And you could say, what could they be? Whew. But are they locked down? Can someone get into it? Like when this very, this renowned researcher who's an IEEE fellow, recently said, oh, it's really simple, Florence. You have your little iPhone, it goes into your nest, and bing, you're in the grid. I was like, okay, I think I get that. And so the world is changing. And so we just need to make sure we're safe, I think, because I think it's up to us from an information technology perspective to make sure we're trying to maintain the security, the privacy of the data. That's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. I was at an event with Sonia Sotomayor, one of our Supreme Court justices here in the US about a year ago, and I said, so are you thinking about Internet of Things, privacy, and security? We're working on the security. She goes, good, because I'm working on the privacy. I don't think, she said, that our citizens realize the civil rights that they're giving up, right, through the data they're making available and the devices. How many of us have said, it goes, okay, can I, authorize, I just need this app, yes. I know I do that all the time. It's terrible. I shouldn't say that because then people are going to try to hack me. But I have a really old car, because I talk about car hacking too, 22 years old. I think I'm going to stick with it for a while. So we really need to think about the security and privacy issues, and that's an issue we have on campuses, right? The privacy of the data for the students. So there are new things to think about in new ways, I think. The things we've done before, many of them are still very valuable, but there may be some new things we have to do. Does that help? Okay, thank you for your questions, very helpful. Other questions or comments? Yes, back there?
Thinking about this from an academic perspective, Is there one or another of the initiatives that you talked about that if we go back to our campuses, we might be talking with our academic partners about? We've got sort of a technology, we've got a College of Technology, and in particular our IT department is sort of in a building year. So I'm wondering, for the benefit of our students and for use by our faculty and what they're trying to teach the students, is there one or more of these programs that we could make them aware of?
So I'd like to mention two things, if I might. Thank you, very good question. First, on the trust and identity side, if they have any concerns about data sharing with other researchers, there are the trust and identity solutions that can be leveraged. So that's one thing, that's more of a technical thing, but you're helping them. On the other side of it, what we're really encouraging is that the campuses create either a makerspace or an IoT lab. It could be a technical lab. It could be, depending on the programs you have, it could be an IoT club where they talk about business issues and new business models, the policy implications. Actually, interestingly, IoT ethics came out of this IEEE meeting we had, and it was at Virginia Tech, a woman who happens to be a lawyer, but they don't have a law school, who's teaching a class on IoT policy. Very interesting. You know, it's more of a technical school, no law school, but she wants them to think about the technology and policy considerations together. So as we think about creating the leaders of the future of this IoT-enabled world, we want them to start thinking through this. I have a few unpaid, small budget, not-for-profit, unpaid undergraduate interns this summer. One of them is a biochemist, and they contacted me. I'm like, I can't pay you. They're like, that's okay. I'm like, okay. Internet2 sounds cool because we're doing new stuff, a lot of fun. And so one of them is a biochemistry major. And so we were talking about some of the challenges in this new world of high-speed genomic data transfer challenges and opportunities, and how do you plumb it all the way to the, the end and the beginning and everywhere, and then also the Internet of Biomedical Things. And he decided to write 2 papers, one on the Internet of Biomedical Things, and he's learning so much. I said, did you look at the FDA defense in depth? Not yet. And then there are a lot of interesting things that they can learn. So if you get them focused on some of these areas, depending on where their energy is, they can learn so much. And the other student we have, or one of the other students, is looking at cybersecurity research with us. NSF, it's all public, and go and see all these abstracts. And he's looking at it with us as we create these regional workshops. And he said, I'm learning so much about the cybersecurity research going on I wasn't aware of, but it's helping me think about the future research I might want to do. I'm like, oh, that's great, because they're our future. Right? So if you just get them started and you enable them, you coach them, you mentor them, you bring in someone that knows a little bit about it, they get them thinking, I think you can start creating really our future leaders in this space. Does that help? Thank you. Thank you for asking that. Actually, that's what Brad Wheeler made me put in my statewide IT thing. He said, so what should we do? I'm like, I shouldn't tell you what to do. He said, yes, you should. I'm like, okay. So it was nice that he said that. And that's one of the key things we had there, is help us create the future, create like an IoT lab, IoT business clubs, help Internet of Biomedical Things discussions, have people write papers, do posters on it, bring experts in, from the local hospital to look at it or something. Create an ecosystem so they know they're not in it alone. I was talking about the Internet of Biomedical Things at one of the hospitals like a year and a half ago. I was quite new at Internet2. And so the CIO at the hospital said, so Florence, do you have like a maturity model for the Internet of Biomedical Things that we could use tomorrow to assess all the devices we have in the hospital? I'm like, I wish. There's no way I could create that by myself, though, right? I don't know all that stuff. It's going to take an ecosystem. It's going to take the payers, the providers, the device manufacturers, the people with the network, the EHR and EMRs. There's a whole bunch of people that are experts in different areas that have to come together. The scary thing is nobody owns that whole ecosystem. Nobody can make that whole ecosystem do what needs to be done. So if we can start creating some type of collaborations on campuses where they start working together, maybe they'll keep working together and hold hands into the future so we can get some of these challenges addressed as an ecosystem. Does that make sense? Is that helpful? Okay. Thank you for your question. I'm happy to talk offline too. And come visit if you want. Lots of fun. Lots of fun. Love meeting with the students. They're our future. They're a lot of fun. Okay, I think I think it's time. I don't want to go too long, but we'll be here all day, and we'll be at the party tonight. Looking forward to that part. But we love being with you, and we want to thank you so much for having us and for all your collaboration. Thank you, and good luck to everybody.